We are joined in the studio by our security and defence analyst, Professor Michael Clarke. Fascinating, isn't it, at the moment, Michael? How far do you expect Ukraine to push into this Russian Kursk region?
Yeah, well, that's a piece of string at the moment because they're pushing as far as they can get, and they're not coming across a great deal of opposition at the moment. I was looking at the area that they occupy, and they're moving. I mean, even the Russians are admitting that they've been fighting at Tolpino, which is outside the main area up in the north. They're fighting at Zurovili. They're fighting at Kolotilovka, or at least there is fighting at Tolokilovka, which is not part of this enclave. And there is more activity down towards Belgorod. What the Ukrainians, for once, are trying to do to the Russians, what the Russians have been doing to them, which is stretch them to actually create issues along the border in other places to take pressure off the enclave that they've created. And this enclave, this Kursk pocket, is getting bigger all the time. So at the moment, it's actually now about 45 or 50 miles long, and it's about 20-odd miles wide. So this pocket is getting larger, and it's based on Susa. But equally, it's moving. I mean, on other maps that we're being very conservative about this, but there are quite a lot of other maps which show advances down to the southeast and further advances up to the northwest. So the pocket is going bigger because the Russians are not able to do very much about it. They've only got local troops. I was looking at the fortification line. This is the line that the Russians have all along their frontier, fortifications. And the fortification line actually goes right through the middle of the pocket. So in other words, the Ukrainians just walked straight over it. That's how good the fortification line was when they got to it. The Russians were completely unprepared for this because they didn't expect there to be a battle anywhere in this part of the frontier. They thought the battle was all down here. But the Ukrainians have pulled a fast one on them, counterpunch, moved into Russian territory. So as military manoeuvres go, it's a classic of its kind. How big it will get will depend on how fast and powerfully the Russians respond to it. But so far, they've been slow. They've not been very effective. That won't last. The Russians will come at this with a great deal of power. They won't settle for this. They will bring in units. They'll do whatever it takes. But how long that will be kind of depends on them more than the Ukrainians.
We've spoken so many times about Russia being, on the front foot with this. How long do you think Ukraine can maintain this position?
It depends on how many troops they want to put into it. I mean, we know they've got more troops in the Sumy region, and they don't pull them together in one place or they'll be vulnerable. But we know there's quite a lot of troops and equipment spread across the Sumy region, and what they will do, what they can do, is bring them together quickly and then move into the pocket to reinforce. But the more troops they bring into it, the bigger the pocket gets, the more people they've got in a vulnerable position. At some point, I keep saying this, at some point they're going to have to conduct a withdrawal in good order. They're going to have to get out. It's called breaking contact. Breaking contact with the enemy. You've got to find a space. If the enemy are attacking, you've got to find 2 or 3 miles of space where you can break contact and then withdraw. It's also known as getting the hell out of there while you still can. And at some point, they'll have to do that, but not yet. They are exploiting it as far as they possibly can. And at the moment, it's the Russians who are on the back foot in this one area.
Sure.
Elsewhere on the front, the Russians are still pushing, the Ukrainians are still in trouble, but they're hoping that this will actually reverse the dynamic and make the Russians bring in better units, good units, to actually create this moment when the Ukrainians will then say, OK, we've had enough, we're off.
Fine. OK, Michael Clarke, thank you. Fascinating, as always.